What's up, guys? Welcome to Film and TV Reviews. I'm Grant Burton, and today I'm reviewing Love, Death and Robots Season 1 on Netflix. So, this is an anthology series made up of 18 5 to 17 minute approximately short films, all animated, all focusing on the themes of love, death, and robots. And I liked it. It is hit and miss at times. Some of them are good, most of them are just okay, and a couple of them are pretty bad, I have to admit. So it's full of cool ideas, cool themes. Animation's gorgeous across the board. Some of it's really stylish, some of it's more traditional. It really does have a good mix of styles, so you're never really watching the same sort of animation over and over. A lot of them do go for the more realistic CGI look. There's one that's almost photorealistic. There's a couple that are more traditional 2D flat animation, and it's just a really cool show. So while I did like it, there are some problems. The runtime, for example, some of them are really short. Most of them seem to be like little ideas that haven't been fully fleshed out or developed. And had they been a bit longer, had they not been restricted to the 5 to 18-minute runtime that most of them have, then I think they could have had something really special and a bit more detailed and focused. On the other hand, some of them are a little too long as well, so that has to be said. So this is not going to be a show for everyone. This is a very gory and violent show. It's like full on in your face violence, gore, guts, blood, everything. And it's also got some really vulgar, coarse language. Personally, I don't mind that, but it is there. Some people won't like it. And there's also a lot of sex and nudity, which is odd for an animated show. And again, this is like really in your face, full frontal nudity, full on sex scenes. It's borderline pornographic at times, I would say. The show is very visceral, very in your face. It wants you to be shocked and surprised by what's on display. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, because it does come across as more of a distraction than anything else. All the violence and the gore, fine. The sex and nudity, fine. I get it, but it is a bit of a distraction from the actual story and the characters at times. Because of this, this is a very masculine show. It seems like it's a show made by horny teenagers for horny teenagers. Again, that's going to limit who will like this or not. You could argue that it glorifies the violence. I think it does glorify the violence. It makes it look cool. It makes you want to give it a go yourself, I suppose. And in terms of the sex and nudity, it's very misogynistic. The depiction of women is really problematic in a lot of these. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The women are often portrayed as objects of desire or sexual attraction. They're there purely for their looks. They're purely there to be used by the men. And yeah, it's a problem. There are a couple that address this a bit more in a bit more detail and depth. So there's one, for example, which is, I want to say, based somewhat on Japanese folklore, but I don't know if it's Japanese or not. I'd have to look up that to be a bit more precise. And that does go into a bit more detail, and it's about a woman trying to get revenge about everything that's happened to her. So all of this is quite cool and interesting, but it is very problematic. So a lot of these stories are a mix of tones. Some of them are horror, some of them are science fiction. There's a couple that are really full of good humor. My personal favorite of all 18 of these was one called Free Robots, which was absolutely hilarious. About free robots who have survived the end of the world basically, and now they're walking around trying to figure out what the humans were like and what they were doing, and their interpretation of everything is just hilarious and funny. Another one that I really liked was one called Beyond Aquila Station, I believe it was, about a space flight that they go into deep sleep, go through a portal, and they end up way beyond wherever they wanted to be. And that one's really photorealistic, really interesting. It's one of the longer ones. It could have been a full-fledged film, really, and a great twist ending. A lot of these do have big twists and surprises and revelations in there. For the most part, they work really well. The Aquila Station one, really memorable, that one. And if you like your twists and turns, if you like your science fiction, you're going to like a lot of these short films. So it's hard to go into too much detail about a lot of these because of how short they are. I can't really talk about the story or the characters in too much detail because that's essentially spoiler territory. I'll talk a little bit later on about that. But a lot of them, the characters are underdeveloped. They're just basically ideas that are there. Because of the short runtime, you don't get a lot of time to go into detail with some of them. There are a couple where you do get that detail, you do get that depth. The one about Japanese folklore, again, don't know if it's actually Japanese, have to look that up. But that one does have more detailed characters than some of the others. And again, the big problem with the characters is the representation of female characters because they are overly sexualized. They are used as objectification, objects of desire. And again, this feels like a show made by horny teenagers for horny teenagers. So, in terms of production, again, I've already touched on a lot of this already. A lot of varying styles of animation. Some of it's really cool and interesting. Some goes for a more Pixar look. Some goes for a more realistic CGI look. Others more 2D animation. The variety here is really impressive. It all looks really gorgeous as well. Some of the films are on the shorter side, some of them are on the longer side. They could have been a bit longer. Some of them, I think, would have allowed them to be a bit more fleshed out, a bit more interesting. Some of them should have been shorter as well. Again, a lot of this I've touched on before. The ones that are really connected with me were the ones where the CGI was almost trying to be photorealistic, with a few exceptions. I really like that style. It reminds me of video games a bit, but I get a feeling we don't see a lot of this because maybe it's too expensive, maybe it just takes too long because of how much detail and effort it goes into. I don't know, but I would like to see more of this realistic CGI style animation. And I would like to see more Love, Death and Robots because I did like it despite some of its flaws. And yet it is problematic in quite a few ways. But that's what I thought of Love, Death and Robots. I'm going to go into a few little spoilers, not too much. I don't want to give away too much about this. But thanks for watching so far. If you haven't watched Love, Death and Robots, all 18 episodes, go watch it, come back, watch the rest of this review. But in the meantime, I'm Grant Burton. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton, or subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment and feedback down below. But full spoilers now for Love, Death and Robots. So I talked about 3 robots. I thought that was hilarious. Beyond the Keeler Station had a great twist. I loved the look of that one. But again, that one does have problematic representation of women. And there's another one called Good Hunting, which I thought was really interesting. It's one of the more fleshed out, well developed stories in there. Also one of the longer ones because of that. And again, it's got the problem of the women in that one are objectified and used as sexual objects. And then that results in the female character basically hunting down those who've caused her grief and punishment and harm in the past. It's, yeah. The way women are treated in this show is really problematic, especially considering this is 2019. A lot of these suggest that the women are only really good at one thing. This is very much a show aimed at male audiences, or at least those attracted to women. But then there are some, like Fish Night, I believe it's called, which are more abstract and up for interpretation than anything else. Personally, I did not like Fish Night at all. I think that was one of the worst ones. It was just a bit weird. And basically, it's about 2 guys going into the desert, and then at the night, they've got like all these ghosts of different fish and sharks and whales and so on floating in the sky, and all of a sudden one of them gets in there, and yeah, it's just weird, a little bit too silly for my liking. But that's all I've got to say about Love, Death and Robots. Not a lot, because again, most of these are just vague ideas that are being made into short films. Some of them are cool, some of them are really interesting. I liked quite a few of them. Some of them are bad, but again, there are problems in there. The sex, the violence, the gore, a lot of it was just in there for the sake of being in there. It didn't have to be there a lot of the time. But hey, I liked it. I do recommend it for certain viewers. It's definitely not for everyone. And I hope we do get to see more, because I'd like to see more variety out there. But thanks for watching. And Twitter, Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. Subscribe to my channel again, yada yada yada. Thanks.